Kansas City Chiefs are already in full off-season mode. So what better time than now than to grade the Kansas City Chiefs 2022 draft class and grade them individually. That's what we'll be doing in today's video. But before we do get into all of that, please be sure to subscribe to the channel and give me that big thumbs up and like this video, as I'm going to keep you up to date on anything Kansas City Chief related that you do not want to miss out on. And without further ado, let's have some fun. Now, going into last offseason, we knew the Kansas City Chiefs were going to need to basically nail their whole entire draft class if they wanted to be Super Bowl contenders or holding that Lombardi trophy as they are now, because they had key departures and key holes that everyone thought, this might not be the same Kansas City Chiefs team. So what we're going to do today is grade all 10 draft picks individually. Now, my grading system may look a little different than yours, so I would love to discuss about how you view these players' draft grades and what you would rate them as well. Basically, how I'm going to attack this is I'm going to go by the value of the player and what they did on the field, and also the value of the draft pick too, and where they were drafted at as well. So you may be like, well, why is this player rated or graded higher than another when it might have outperformed or they look better on the field? I'm going to put all that together with their performance on the field and the value of the draft pick. But let's cut all the nonsense off and let's get into these draft picks. Now, our first round pick number 21, Trent McDuffie. I graded him as an A overall. Now, there was a lot of things that went into this, and I actually want to kind of rewind back into last April's draft period, actually draft day, if anything. And I remember when the Kansas City Chiefs traded up into the first round with their first overall pick. I want to say it was like pick 29 or something like that, and they traded to pick 21. I remember there was a hot commodity, a hot name that all Chiefs Kingdom want, and it was Jermaine Johnson. And then a lot of us were upset when we saw the pick was Trent McDuffie, and we were wondering, what are we doing with that pick, and is he even really worth that slot as well? And then you start seeing it's like Trent McDuffie was a dog, and actually the Chiefs got a steal because early off in the draft process, he looked like he could be a top 15 pick. So Veach, he nabbed him while he could before any other teams could, a la the Buffalo Bills, because the Buffalo Bills were hot on him, and the Buffalo Bills seemed like they really wanted him, and that's why you see with their draft pick, they ended up drafting Kaiir Elam. Now going to what McDuffie did on the field, it was a tough start for him. Week 1, he looked really good. He actually looked magnificent until he had an unfortunate, I think it was a high ankle sprain, that took him out because of the Arizona turf, unfortunately, and that sidelined him for like 4 to 6 weeks, and once he was able to get back on the field, he was looking like that solidified cornerback number 1 who deserves to have his own island. He didn't end up with any interceptions, but he had a lot of pass breakups. I want to say he had 7 on the year, playing not all 17 games. So he was on pace to have double-digit pass breakups. And the thing I love about McDuffie, even though he's not the biggest dude out there or the strongest, that boy will go for a tackle and lay the wood. There is huge promise for him going into 2023 because, like I mentioned, he doesn't even have an interception. And it felt like even in that playoff run as well, he had his hands on the ball multiple times to have his first career interception, and he wasn't able to reel him in. I believe next year, he's going to go in the lab this offseason, and he's going to get his interceptions. And if he can tally in takeaways with his tackling and with his coverage, that boy is going to have an island sooner rather than later. It's funny, I picked that Kansas City Chiefs Kingdom wasn't really excited about. Ended up being a very, very highly graded pick. I am slotting him with an A overall. Now to our second first round pick number 30, George Karlaftis. I graded him as an A overall as well. And it actually took a little while for his wheels to get turning on the field. Nothing to do with what he was doing on the field as of the sack production and when it started to tally up. And man, once he was able to get a sack, they just kept coming. He ended the season with 6 sacks. He had a postseason sack as well. And you can see he is going to be a very good pass rusher in the future as well. And I think even in the draft, if you look at it, I think it was very good value there as well. His value, I guess, if that's what you want to call it, started sliding. I remember when the first draft process started and evaluations in early February last year, he was rated a top 10 pick. But then when we got into April, he started sliding down draft boards, and the Kansas City Chiefs were able to nab him at pick 30. And I was ecstatic to get him. I don't know if a lot of you remembered or if you were subscribed to the channel at this point, But when I was viewing George Karlaftis, I remember having so high hopes that I thought he was going to break Derek Thomas's rookie record with 9 sacks. And man, if he would have been on the same pace as he was just a little bit earlier, it would have been very interesting. As well, though, too, early in training camp, and you saw early in the season as well, George Karlaftis has a relentless motor. He doesn't care if he's out of the play or very much so in it. He will keep going and keep pursuing, and that's what you love to see. And that's when you knew once he got a sack, it was just going to keep coming and coming and coming. Because early in the season, you saw he was getting close. He was getting the pressures. He just couldn't get the quarterback down. Now that he got a sack and then he got 6 of them, you could tell, oh, he can be a beast on this line moving forward. And that's going to be exciting to see moving forward as well, because you'll have Chris Jones, you have George Karlaftis, and if the Kansas City Chiefs can add multiple pass rushers, it looks like they like to add veteran presence. So we'll see what they do this free agency period, or if they draft another stud in the first round. That would be very, very positive for a line that already had 55 sacks last year. George Karlaftis is going to be a huge piece for this line moving forward. Now as we go into the second round, at pick 54, we selected Skyy Moore. And this was a very indifferent pick to a lot of people. Honestly, with me, I love the pick. Now, Chiefs Kingdom, and also myself as well, you saw the Twitter controversy where, damn, the Kansas City Chiefs could have had George Pickens, but they decided not to select him, and they thought Skyy Moore would have been a better fit. And boy, oh boy, it was definitely a learning experience year for the rookie Skyy Moore. It was a difficult year for the better half of the whole entire year until the playoffs hit. And that's why I raised his grade a little bit to a C, a passing grade. So if we were just focusing on regular season and all that, it would be hard for me to give Skyy Moore a passing grade. Honestly, I hate to be so tough and strict on it, but I might have even gave him an F. But when it came to the Cincinnati game, and you could see he redeemed himself, and he had that punt return, and you could see it was a huge weight lifted off his shoulders, the monkey off of his back. You could tell, okay, he's starting to feel a rhythm. And then you get into the Super Bowl. Skyy Moore, who had 22 catches this year, no touchdowns, has his first career touchdown in the Super Bowl against the Eagles, 2 positive games back to back. I had to raise it to a C. And it gives me high hopes, and I've always had high hopes for Skyy Moore in this offense as well, because it's just like, I didn't understand why he wasn't getting the ball, because even if you look at his stats, I think there was like a 92% rating that he was open in single coverage. So it's that chemistry between Mahomes and Moore that they need to develop more this offseason, and they will do that in the next couple of weeks. I already know Mahomes is going to have them boys back in Texas throwing around and getting into the groove of things all over again. Last year, Moore didn't get any of that because he was drafted in April, so he wasn't with MVS and the crew doing all that things. He will be there this year. They will get the chemistry, and I am feeling really, really good that sophomore season for Skyy Moore is going to be really, really positive. And I feel like he's going to be more involved in this gameplay too, because we don't know what the wide receiver room is going to look like again. The Kansas City Chiefs hope to re-sign Juju. We'll have to see what they do with Mecole Hardman moving forward, and as well, Justin Watson is a free agent. That just leads me to believe Skyy Moore is going to have a role in this offense, and just look for big things coming out of the second year, but he definitely ended the year on a huge positive note. The Kansas City Chiefs had another selection in the second round. Actually, it was the last pick in the second round, pick number 62, and they selected safety out of Cincinnati, Bryan Cook. And this one, kind of indifferent to most Chiefs Kingdom. I know when we selected Bryan Cook, it kind of caught me by surprise a little bit, because I didn't think a safety was going to be selected there, and I didn't know why we were moving that way when I thought, hey, maybe we can get another pass rusher here, linebacker, or even go back-to-back wide receiver picks and see how it goes. But with Bryan Cook, he's an interesting player that is developing really well. We knew him coming out of Cincinnati as a hard hitter, and he displayed that throughout the year. Now, he didn't get much playing time until later in the year, but when he was out there, definitely in 3 safety sets, you could see there's a learning curve he has to overcome, but you definitely see the talent is there. That's why at this moment, I'm going to give him a grade rating of a C. But he had a huge play against the Cincinnati Bengals where he had a pass deflection that ended up as an interception to Joshua Williams. The potential is there. We just have to see what it is moving forward and how the Kansas City Chiefs value him too, because they got a huge free agent this year in Juan Thornhill. Do they want to just push forward and put Brian Cook in that role, or do they want to re-sign Juan Thornhill, or do they want to explore the free agency route with a safety? It's going to be very, very interesting to see what these next couple weeks provide and what the Kansas City Chiefs might be looking into. Brian Cook does have huge potential and huge high hopes for this team. I just got to see a little bit more before I'm sold, but I definitely like what he displayed. I definitely love the talent. He just needs more game tape out there. Now we go to the third round. At pick 103, the Kansas City Chiefs select Leo Chenal. And this was a fan favorite for a lot of people in Chiefs Kingdom, including myself, because we were like, we got our third piece in the linebacking core with Willie Gay, Nick Bolton, and Leo Chenal. And when you just watch Leo Chenal's tape, his athleticism jumps right out to you. He is a beast. I gave him a rating of a B. Now, he didn't have much production throughout the year. Actually, he didn't start playing until the better half of later in the year. So the reason I rated that kind of higher than I rated Brian Cook is because of the value. It was a mid-third round pick, and also the whole field as well, because I believe Leo Chenal is going to be a stud on this team. He had 1 sack in the regular season, and he had 1 sack in the postseason as well. I believe next year, the Chiefs are just going to run with those three fully from the get-go, and it's going to be a sight to see. You already know what Willie Gay does with the speed and athleticism. Then you already know what Nick Bolton does as a thumper and the athleticism. And then Leo Chenal is basically the best of both two that just needs to put it all together. The Kansas City Chiefs can have one of the scariest linebacker trios out there, and the youth is magnificent. And you love to see it. And they can be flying all over the ball. I love to see death row going after the quarterback and after the running backs. And when you have the right side secured with Willie Gay and the left side secure with Leo Chenal, or however they play it, and you know Nick Bolton, he's going to be your quarterback of that defense and managing the way. There's very, very promising stuff going for that defense. Leo Chenal definitely deserves a B grading right here. Now we go to round 4, pick 135, and we select cornerback Joshua Williams. And boy, he is everything that we thought he was going to be. We knew he was a raw prospect. That means you're going to get your good, you're going to get your bad until everything clicks. And that's basically what we saw throughout the year. And that's why I gave him, I might want to change it here because it's so difficult. So the value of it. Initially, I gave him a C+. I think I want to go to a B- here because you can see he can be a really, really great playmaker in this league. It's just he's got to tie things down. And that's where that raw prospect comes out there because you see he is raw and he will make his mistakes. And as I mentioned earlier in the season, as a Chiefs Kingdom, we just got to kind of sit back and watch the growth. And we saw it. He had a couple interceptions on the year. Actually, he had one in the regular season, and he had a crucial one in the Cincinnati game, as I mentioned, where Brian Cook had the deflection too. He can be a very, very good playmaker in this league. He just needs to put the pieces to the puzzle together. And the bright side is, most of those pieces are already in place. So a good offseason throughout this year, and to see what he does in the preseason, and you run out these young boys back out there again, it will be exciting to see. I love what Joshua Williams is out there. Like I mentioned, just got to tighten things up a little bit, but I believe he will. He was that raw prospect, but now he's getting better and better and going into a sophomore season. I believe he will take that next step. Now, we go on to round 5. Pick 145, the Kansas City Chiefs select Darian Kinnard. And this is where it gets very, very tricky for me. Is maybe I'm going to leave this up to you, Chiefs Kingdom. I had a struggling thing in my head of, do I want to leave this player's grade incomplete, or do I want to be harsh here and put it as an F? Now, here's my theory. Now, the reason, of course, as we all know it's incomplete is because he didn't play throughout the year. He didn't play at all. But also, is where I want to kind of rate it an F is because we had very, very high hopes for Darian Kinnard. Maybe that's mostly on Chiefs Kingdom for having those hopes on a mid-5th round pick, but we've seen it with the likes of Trey Smith, that he came in and he bulldozed his way to the starting lineup and he became an all-pro, Pro Bowl type caliber guard on this team. We were expecting the same for Darian Kinnard. The reason I'm struggling with, do I want to grade him or do I want to give him an F, is because he had opportunities throughout the preseason and be in the starting lineup. And also, you had guys like Lucas Niang at the right tackle who has been constantly injured, and Andrew Wiley, who has been struggling throughout the year, yes, he did play a magnificent Super Bowl, so I can't slight him there, but you can't not just ignore what happened in the regular season as well, where he struggled through most of it. And the Kansas City Chiefs didn't want to put him on the field. Now, I know the way Coach Reid maneuvers and the way he moves forward is he doesn't usually give rookies a lot of playing time until he feels like they deserve to be on the field. And if that's the case, is Darian Kinnard better than Andrew Wiley or even a Lucas Niang to where we could look forward to him being a right tackle? Or do the Kansas City Chiefs really got to address that early in the draft this year or in free agency? That's where I'm so confused if I want to grade Darian Kinnard at this moment or not, because I feel like he had a really, really good possibility of being on the field this year with the huge question marks at the right tackle position, and he didn't see it at all. He was actually inactive for the most of the better half of the 2022 season. And that was a bummer to me because when you watch Darian Kinnard's tape at Kentucky, you could tell he's a beast. He's a dog. And for some reason, or my speculation itself, it didn't seem like it was translating to what we heard in the preseason or even in training camp, where there was guys like Jarion Christian who was getting snaps at the left tackle when Orlando Brown was out, where you're like, oh, well, we don't even know who he is. So we're like, okay, why aren't we seeing Darian Kinnard taking snaps with the first team? This is going to be a very, very interesting offseason for Darian Kinnard and whether he has a role on this team moving forward or not. I'm not saying he's going to get cut by any stretch of the imagination because he's a sophomore. But going into this year, he needs to solidify. There's still going to be a huge question mark at the right tackle position. We still might go through the whole dilemma with Orlando Brown Jr. again at the left tackle position if the Kansas City Chiefs decide to franchise him again and he doesn't show up to camp. So this line will basically be doing the same thing as it did last year. We'll see if Darian Kinnard steps up. I'll keep it incomplete. I'm going to be nice, but I'm on the fringe of saying F as well because I believe he should have been on the field this year. But let's discuss Chiefs Kingdom. It's gonna be a good conversation. Now, as we move into the last round of the draft, the 7th round, the Kansas City Chiefs struck gold, and who would have thought it? That's why Brett Veach is who he is and one of the best GMs, if not the best GM in the draft. And we're going to start with our first draft pick in the 7th round in Jaylen Watson. Again, I'm going to give him a solid A rating just because of the value at the position and what a 7th round cornerback did on the field for the Kansas City Chiefs this year. Like, none of us anticipated this. Honestly, me in specific, I didn't even think Jaylen Watson was going to make this team. That is a huge error on my end. I have to give him props and kudos to where it is due. And he started this season off, firing on all cylinders and basically had the game-winning interception against the LA Chargers. And then he showed up in the playoffs as well with 2 interceptions. That is something so positive and so bright to see a 7th round pick out of a small college coming into this league, having 3 interceptions on the year, and now you're a starting cornerback in this league. Actually, the Kansas City Chiefs have now 3 rookie cornerbacks that may be starters moving forward into next year. That is high hopes. I don't know how else you can grade Jaylen Watson. If you want to go A+, I'm there for you on it. I went with the A just because in the middle part of the season, you didn't hear much of him, and I think that's because of what Spags was doing rotational-wise between him and Joshua Williams. I kind of wanted to see him more out there and more frequently, but I'm not going to ding him too much for that because when he was out there, he was a baller. Jaylen Watson definitely deserves an A grading. Now as we go into the Kansas City Chiefs' 2nd pick in the 7th round, it's that grown man himself. It's Isaiah Pacheco. And I do not know how you cannot give this dude an A+ rating. Like, you would be absurd. The fact that the Kansas City Chiefs found probably a franchise running back in the mid-7th round, kudos to Brett Veach. He even mentioned before the draft that he loves the running backs in the later of the draft, and he got his guy. And Isaiah Pacheco coming into this year, and you've heard me say it plenty of times on this channel, he said he was coming to take a grown man's job. And he was literally going up that ladder until he got that number 1 seed running back and took Clyde Edwards-Helaire's spot, even though CEH got injured, but he was not turning around whatsoever. He had 830 rush yards this year, 150 receiving yards, 5 total touchdowns, a Super Bowl touchdown, and he was magnificent. And in the return game, I think for the year he had over 1,500 1,500 scrimmage yards. Boyd is absurd. It's going to be very, very exciting to see him next year. I have high hopes for Isaiah Pacheco moving next year. Honestly, maybe it's a bold prediction. Maybe it's a too rich of a prediction. But I definitely feel like if the Kansas City Chiefs can focus on the run game, but not just in that, focus on Isaiah Pacheco, he's going to be a top 5 running back next year. He's already broke the scene, and now it's time for him to solidify his role, and I believe he will do it too. The Kansas City Chiefs will still move by a running back by committee, but if they focus on him as the number 1 ball carrier, you can't tell me he's going to not be a top 5 running back. He is a grown man, and he ain't leaving the field anytime soon. Chiefs Kingdom should be excited about Isaiah Pacheco, because I know I am. Now, as we get to the Kansas City Chiefs' final pick in the 7th round, their 10th selection, they selected Nazeeh Johnson. And I gave him a C rating. And I actually want to give Nazeeh Johnson a little credit here, because out of all 10 draft picks coming into the final 53-man roster cut down, he was the only one cut. And to actually end the year on the Kansas City Chiefs active roster and play almost fully special teams at the end of the year is huge kudos and huge reason why I gave him a C grading. I think moving forward, now that the Chiefs have, well, they didn't move on because it didn't work in their way, but now that they don't have Chris Lamons, I definitely believe that they feel that Nazeeh Johnson could fill that role and be their new special teams ace moving forward. And just think about that. The Kansas City Chiefs had 3 selections in the 7th round, and they could all be somewhat starters either on special teams, defense, or offense. That is amazing. That's honestly absurd, because that's something most teams could never do. What the Kansas City Chiefs have gathered together in this draft with 10 total draft picks, honestly, besides one in Darian Kennard, they all played a huge role into the reason why the Kansas City Chiefs are holding the Lombardi. And it is a testament to what Coach Reid and Brett Veach do week in and week out for 365 days of the year to make sure that the Kansas City Chiefs will be contenders every single year. With that, Chiefs Kingdom, I'm going to close this video out. Let's discuss. Let's have fun. I want to hear what you grade the Kansas City Chiefs draft picks, and let's discuss. I will enjoy talking with y'all in the comments, but before I do close this out, please be sure to subscribe to the channel. Give me that big thumbs up if you did like this video. I'll check in with y'all shortly. Take care.